How's it going, everyone? It's Rashard. So, today's Reddit post got me thinking a little bit. The question of the post was, who are you? And it was intriguing because it was such a broad but specific question that it made me really think and have to reconsider who I am. So there were tons of comments, as always, on Reddit. And instead of going over what other people were saying about who they were and who they felt that they were and who they thought that they were supposed to be or going to be, I decided to do some self-reflection myself. Right? So, first question is, who am I? And that's a very good question because I still don't know who I am. I have values and there are morals that I follow. However, I can't sit and say, after thinking for roughly 2 hours, who am I? I've never sat down and I've never said, who am I? What defines me? And I still can't come up with an answer. And a part of me believes that that's probably a good thing because I am on the pursuit to find out who I am. What did you want to be when you were younger? So I never considered that I would be working in this capacity ever. Um, for the individuals that know me the most, I'm pretty introverted. I don't like large crowds. I don't like lots of people. That doesn't mean that I can't operate in large crowds or speak in front of people, things of that nature. But for me to recharge, I have to isolate. I have to withdraw. I have to be in, it sounds weird, confined places, dark rooms, things that make me feel like I'm by myself. So for me to sit here and say that I envisioned when I was younger that I would be working in this capacity would have never crossed my mind. So initially, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get into forensic science, crime scene investigation, things of that nature, somewhere along that path or somewhere in the middle of it. And along the way, after I finished, after I graduated college, I took a year off and I just decided that, you know what, I just didn't want to do that anymore. Spent all this time, all this money, all this energy, all these resources into pursuing that just to come to find out that I didn't even want it. I didn't even want to do it. But that's okay because who I was at the age of 18 compared to who I was at the age of 22 were two vastly different individuals. They didn't, I'm still the same person, but my worries, wants, and needs had changed. They weren't the same. So I ended up taking on this field, and I've been in this field for, like I said, 10 years, and it has been an adventure, to say the least. What was my biggest realization in life? That choices and decisions come with consequences. And when you're younger, the amount of foresight that you generally have is not there. So you make choices and you make decisions and you don't foresee how things are going to pan out in the future. Right? So one good example was when I was younger, me and my wife, we purchased our first car. And I'm gonna say that first car because it was like not a beater, it was not a hoopty type vehicle. And I went to the car dealership and I was like, I don't have any type of credit because I've never built it, don't know nothing about this. But I went to the car dealership and I spoke to the salesman, and they're like, hey, look, we can get you approved for, this car loan. I said, awesome, that's great. What are the payments gonna look like? I think it was like $412 or $413 for like a standard crossover vehicle. So I was like, okay. I was like, if the payments are going to be that, I said that's fine. Then I'll be able to do that because I just got this good job, and I'm bringing in this money, and my, she was my girlfriend at the time, and my wife is like, she's working too, so we're going to be able to make these payments, no problem, right? Then they were like, here's the icing on the cake. We could even break these down into 2-week payments, so you don't have to pay like $200 every 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, only $200 every 2 weeks. That's super easy. That's super simple. So after about 3-ish years of making these $400 payments, I don't know why, I was like, you know what? Why don't I just go look to see how much I'm paying in interest? Because I never even considered that there was such thing as interest on a loan. Just poor education. And come to find out, I was paying like almost 19% interest on this car loan, and I had been paying it for like 3 years. I was like, this is insane. Like I had only paid like, I think like half of the loan off, and I was like, wow. Like, if only I would have known to sit back and be like, this is not a good idea, or had understood that my choices and my decisions were going to lead to this consequence at this point in time, I would have never done it. But it's a learning curve, right? You have to learn from your choices and your decisions and realize, hey, you know what? That didn't work out too well. So moving forward, I made better choices and better decisions, and put myself in better financial situations in order to avoid having to pay such high interest rates. It's just a life experience. Do you think you're overly optimistic or overly pessimistic? And I believe that I'm somewhere in the middle, and I think a lot of people are in the middle. Sometimes we find ourselves swaying one direction or the other just due to life circumstances, stressors, things that are going on outside of our control that we're trying to control, so it's driving us a little bit stir crazy. And I want to say that I find myself in times and in periods of both. And like I said, it just depends on the day. Like, I may wake up one morning and be like, this is just not the day. Today's just not the day that I want to deal with this. And I might go a couple hours just rolling around in that feeling of, I just don't like it. It all can burn right here, right now, and that's fine. And I'll be just fine with that. And like I said, I'll roll around in it for a couple hours, and then usually I tell myself, hey, either we can cry about things we can't control, or we could just lace our bootstraps up and go get after it. But that's a choice every day that you have to make, and it's a choice that I have to make every single day as well. How do you do with taking your own advice? Horrible. I suck at it. One thing I realize about myself is that I am good with information and problem solving and helping others navigate through their problems, identifying footholds, identifying pitfalls, and how to navigate those. And I am great at that. For my own self, horrible with it. I couldn't even help myself through any piece of advice because, number one, I am pretty stubborn. There's just not a whole lot of quit in me. It's just not a thing. I may have to reset, but as far as like quitting something completely, it's just not a thing. So I don't do well with taking my own advice. It's hard to want to sit down and be like, okay, Richard, like, you need to take this piece of advice that you just gave somebody. Like, I always have these realizations. Like, I'll say something, it'll come out of my mouth, and then like afterwards, I'll sit back and I'll be like, I need to start applying that. And I'm like, why can't you do that in the first place, right? So when people ask me, hey, do you take like your own advice? Like you must have it all figured out. I do not. I am just in the same race as everybody else trying to figure it out. What is your what is your best piece of advice you would give somebody who's in a marriage? So I can't speak for women, but I'll speak for the men on here. Gentlemen, marriage is tough. It is tough because you're both fighting for the same team, but sometimes the disagreements get difficult, and you're both saying the same thing, but it's coming out in different ways. And learning to drop the guard in order to be able to understand what's going on underneath gets difficult because emotions start running high and you can't do enough thinking to mitigate how fast the emotions are rising, right? So if some random person on the side of the street says something to you, you're more than likely to just kind of be like, huh. And you'll take a second to analyze what's going on and you'll be like, this is really not worth my time. But when you're in a relationship with somebody and you've been through a lot, you've gone through a lot of things, that meter for some reason seems to go up a lot faster than it should, right? It's because you're emotionally connected with that individual. So the thought process has to speed up, and I'm definitely not an expert in it, and I suck at it at times. And sometimes, like, my wife's like, why can't you just think the way I want you to think? And I'm like, I whiffed it that time. And like I said, I'm stubborn. So sometimes it takes me a little bit, sometimes it takes a longer process. But it's about the journey, and it's about growth. And the person that I was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 6 months ago, is not the same person that's here today. And my plan is that I'm going to continue to grow in the next 6 months, in the next 12, 18, 36 months, to be a better husband, to be a better support, a better role model for my wife, so that I can be more of, you know, the husband that she wants to see and the husband that she envisions me to be. How many businesses have you started? Well, I've started a lot. Some have gone as planned and some haven't. And I would say that none of them failed. I would say that I failed in planning, if that makes sense. So I didn't have a plan in some of my businesses. I just went out and I just did it. I was just like, you know what? We're just gonna dive in and we're gonna see what this is about, right? So the first kind of like business that I had was like a food prepping business. So I made meals for people, and it went extremely well, like more than I thought it was going to. Like I first started out with like just making like a meal here and there for a couple people, and then all of a sudden it just blew up like wildfire. Before I knew it, like people were messaging me like constantly, like, hey, could you prep me meals for today, or could you prep me like 4 or 5 meals for the week? And like it like blew up so fast, and I was like, oh snaps, like this just got like intense really fast. So I was like pumping out meals for like 20 or 30 people like a week. And like we're talking like some people wanted like meals for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it would just got like insane, like really, really fast. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't know like how do you set up an LLC. I didn't know like how do you, you know, go about, you know, renting out a kitchen. I like these are things that I learned after I kind of like was like burnt out from doing it, because I was really just trying to do it all myself. And after about, I would say like 9 months, it just got like way too overwhelming, way too stressful. I didn't have a plan, and I failed that business. And like sure enough, as like things were like progressing and growing and growing and growing, in the town I was living in, somebody had actually moved forward and opened up their own like clean like eating place where people can go and buy like these meals and stuff. So like it wasn't like it wasn't that the business failed, it was that I failed due to poor planning. I should have had somewhat of a plan enough to be like, hey, like once I hit this milestone, like this next gear needs to kick in. And that was not the case. I was just stuck in first gear and I was just redlining until my engine blew. Another business that I had was I had gotten to like personal training. So I did that for a couple years on the side, and I do it every now and then for certain individuals. And I believe that did not come to fruition like I wanted it to, partly because I couldn't, like, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it 100%. Like, if you come to me and you're like, hey, I need advice, or I need a plan, I need to get my stuff together, I need help doing this. If you tell me that, we're balls to the wall, foot on the pedal, and we're going, and we're gonna do this until it's done. We're gonna see it through all the way. No brakes, all gas. And a lot of the individuals that I was serving kind of just wanted to feel good. Like they just wanted to just go through the motions. And there are personal trainers that do that, which is 100% fine because not everybody needs to train on an intense level. But the services that I was offering they just weren't meshing. And I think I gave that up too soon. I think I chose to just kind of let that lay down just because I wasn't attracting the clients that I wanted to serve. Another one was a supplement business that I started, and that was fun. And I would say that was the one business that I learned the most about how to find product, how to market, how to advertise, what's the difference between marketing, advertising, and branding, learning how to find customers, how to drive customers to your website, to your product, and how to actually speak to people about something and about sales, and how do you convert people from being interested into purchasing. And that took a lot of growth. I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of research, I watched a lot of videos, and I learned a lot about how business works on like a small level. And I think that was a very great experience. And the only reason why that did not go off more than it should have was I didn't have the time. During that period in my life, a lot had gone on. I had went to Army Infantry School, and I was there for like five months. And by the time I came back, I had a lot of things that I needed to take care of. I had been gone away from my wife and my kids, my family. I've been away from everybody, and there was just a whole lot of stuff I had to try to get back into the groove of. And unfortunately, that was something that had to be let go in order for me to get things back on track. But with all that being said, now I've started another business, and this one is moving in a direction that I had envisioned at first. I was like, okay, like we're gonna start this, and then we're gonna see how this goes. And I partnered up with a few people, and I have noticed that the information that I have gained over the years and the information that they have gained over the years, like we're all coming together, and like this plan is actually working. Like it's one of those things where it's like you throw it out there and you're like, let's see if this works, and then all of a sudden it just starts working. You're like, why couldn't I have done this earlier? Like I should have just planned up, I should have just partnered up with these guys beforehand on several other ventures, and probably would be milestones ahead. But this is all about the experience, right? It's all about the journey and the destination. And now we're learning even more things, and than we did when we were trying to do these things ourselves. Um, and that's not to say that this is going to be the last business that I do, um, which is the coffee business. That's not to say it's going to be the last one. This could be the first of many, and that's the hope, because it's all about the journey, right? What was the hardest thing you did? What was the hardest thing you had to overcome? And I think the most difficult thing that I have to overcome is myself. It's who I am. And I had this, what you would call revelation or epiphany, back during Army Infantry School. I forgot what week it was. We're out in the field for like 3 days, 4 days, something like that. And I had been up, I'm not gonna say I had been like up straight for like 24 hours, because technically you can't do that, but I was. Just because I was in a leadership role and I had to make sure that the people who were under me were making sure the people that were under them and under them were doing what they're supposed to do. And I could not rest until everybody was doing what they were supposed to do, in a sense. So we're out in the field, and it's like, I don't know, 1 a.m, and I'm part of what you'd call like the HQ, so I have to radio things up, XYZ. And the radio guy, I was like, hey, look, my shift is done. I just pulled a 3-hour stint. I need you to pull the next 2 hours, then wake up the next guy to run the next 2 hours, because then by this time it'll be like 6 a.m. We have to start getting up and packing all our stuff and be at 100%. The dude's like, yeah, I got you. So I didn't even pull out my bed. I didn't take off my boots. I didn't take off anything. I just laid up against a tree. And I couldn't have been asleep for more than 15 minutes. And I feel this tapping on my head, and I hear somebody saying, King, King. And I'm like, at first I thought I was like dreaming, like somebody was saying my name. And sure enough, it was my senior drill sergeant, just tapped me on the head. And he's like, explain to me why you're asleep. I was like, it's my turn to bed down. And he's like, no, it's not. He's like, why is your radio guy asleep? And I look over, and like 2 feet away from me is my radio guy, knocked out on the radio, just sleep. And I was like, oh, come on. So he's like, fix it or there's gonna be a problem. Fair enough. So I address the situation. I'm like, hey man, like, gotta stay up. Whatever you gotta do whatever you gotta do just to stay up. He's like, my bad, I'll take care of it. Cool, awesome. Go to bed down again. I don't know, I think 25, 30 minutes went by. Then it happens again. Tap, tap, tap. Oh, King. Oh, King. I'm like, come on. Like, so I wake up, senior drill sergeant again. Yes, drill sergeant. He's like, where's your radio guy at? And I'm like, I don't know. I bed it down again, and then sure enough, here comes the radio guy. And he's like, oh, I was in the tree line. I was taking a piss. And I was only gone for like, 45 seconds. And I was like, I don't know what you want from me. So he was like, Senior Sergeant was like, okay, now we're gonna play games. So I was like, nah, this is where it all starts, right? This is where it's all just gonna burn down. It's just gonna be mayhem, and everybody's gonna have to pack up all this stuff. It's like 4 a.m. And he was like, I'm gonna be back in 5 minutes, and if this is not fixed, I'm just gonna make this living hell for you guys. So I was like, all right. So we addressed it, we fixed it, and finally got into a system, and we're like, okay, we're good. It's like, I'm good. Now I can go to sleep, right? And as I'm starting to drift off to sleep, I'm understanding, and I'm like, you know what? Like, even though I am like running on zero energy, because you can't have any, like, while you're there, technically you're not supposed to have any caffeine. Any coffee that they give you in the MREs to make you go to the bathroom more than it perks you up. So even after all of that, after the entire day that we were, running drills, running battle drills, doing all this stuff, like, running and doing all this stuff, and then everything that was going on in the evening and at night, and then it started like downpouring, raining, and all this stuff. Like in the midst of all that stuff, like I was able, like my brain was able to function on just a cool, calm, collected like setting. And that's when I realized, like, no matter how hard something gets or how hard something is, my brain will always resort back to its most basic setting, which is just calmness. And that's one thing that I would say is who I am, is that I'm calm and I'm level-headed to a default. Like that's where my setting is. And I think this whole journey that I've been on in life up until this point has always been a test of that, because I'm always finding myself in situations where I'm in highly stressful situations, highly compromisable situations, and I continue to stay level, and I continue to stay calm, and I continue to stay the voice of reason. And it took me having to go through that experience to understand a part of who I am and a part of who I want to be. And I mean, even after basic training and everything that I had to deal with when I came back home, and then even just recently with me having to go to airborne school and jump out of an airplane. Like I always told myself, like, oh, I would love to go skydiving. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I was actually gonna have to skydive at some point in my life. I always just said it, and then sure enough, I found myself on a plane, and my thoughts are racing, and my knees are shaking, and I'm quivering, and I'm like, I'm probably going to die. And even amongst all of that, when it was time to go, my brain just was able to turn off, and I was able to stay cool and just coast out the door. Did that several times. But I think all of that was a combination of everything that I've been through in life that got me to the point to do that. And now moving forward through life, I'm going to find that there are going to be more challenges and more things that I'm going to have to deal with. But that all comes to a head because I understand more about myself, and I understand more about who I am. I may not know exactly who I am, but I know a part of who I am. And that's the biggest thing. It's always about the journey, not the destination. All right, so thank you guys for listening to me rant. I know this one's a little bit different than the normal Reddit posts that I do. But if you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, if you want any insight, any advice, anything of that nature, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get back with you guys.